for those that have either been in massage practice or have ever been a patient at a doctor's office or anything before, you know the human body is super complex. And so the body can move in a lot of ways, a lot of things can go wrong, there's a lot of muscles in the body, a lot of bones. And so how do we simplify that? How do we let go of all the little details that we may or may not know and simplify our treatment and our own body mechanics? And so I'm going to teach you a few little tricks that I've learned over the years through both massage and the other studies that I've done to help simplify this. Okay, so one of the big problems with the human body is that it's so complex that it can go wrong in a lot of different ways. So how do we simplify a structure or an organization that has so many little details that allow it to function? So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down into simple shapes and lines. So the first shape that we look at when it comes to posture is the triangle. In architecture, in nature, we see this shape time and time again. And so why is it so powerful? Why is it such a good structure that we see in so many places? It's because of the relationship between the top and the bottom, or the apex and the base. Okay? Now, assuming that this is an actual triangle that's structurally aligned, what happens is when force comes down upon the apex of the triangle, it gets distributed evenly through the entire structure and then gets absorbed into the ground or the surface underneath. And so no part of this structure gets worked or stressed any more or less than any other part. The work is distributed evenly. Okay? And so that's one thing that makes this so functional. Now, if you were to, for some reason, have a triangle like this, not even a triangle, but the apex had been displaced over one of the boundaries of the base, or even if it was off like this to a lesser degree, nature, law, would create a new apex, and this entire portion over here would be at structural risk. Okay? How does this apply to the human body? Now, in the human body, the apex that we operate around for the biggest triangle structure within us is the crown of our head. You have your frontal line right here, crown right there. Okay? And so, what creates the base? These two boundary lines. The crown, and then the feet. What part of the foot? Now, most people have been taught that you just measure the foot in half, and the physical measurement, the length, divided in half is the middle of the foot. That is not what I've been taught. You can do a test that I'll describe too to gauge which one is correct when it comes to posture. But what I was taught is that we go a little bit lateral down the parasagittal line, or the line that goes straight through here, and then right in front of the heel. So basically, right in the middle of the plantar fascia. Okay? And so these 2 points that create our base are right here in the foot. A little bit to the side, a little bit loaded to the rear. And so when we align the crown down through the center of those 2 points, we have an optimal neutral alignment. Okay? That's your starting point. Now, if you've ever worked a day in your life, you know that you do not stay in perfect posture the entire time. You move the head around, the body around, and even if you're doing the massage, no matter what you've been taught, like sometimes you start to scope forward. You know, your body changes. And so what good is this information? It's our starting and our ending point. It's our aiming point. So I'll go over that with the parallels, but to finish off on here, when our crown is aligned down through the middle of here, and right about here would be our pelvic floor. If you imagine the two sits bones, the tailbone and the pubic bone, this line here goes straight down the middle of those. And once again, we are rear loaded, just like in the foot here, for power, and we're front loaded for direction manipulation and to hold all of our organs and whatnot. okay? And so with that triangle in mind, think about what happens when you have someone with this posture and the crown of the head is in front of the base and you're breaking that boundary. It ends up having this structural effect right here, okay? If this were the crown of your head, okay, maybe this was your pelvic floor, your hips, this is your thoracic area, okay? That load gets transferred and just by pure law of physics, it'll strain that area. Now, when people build structures architecturally or when we make machines, we can engineer safety systems to reduce what's known as fatigue or work that goes through an area that isn't intended to. When it comes to the human body, one of the most complex systems that we have, the nervous system, all of our physiology, will create compensation patterns to protect our joints, our spine, and our organs. Okay, those are like number one to protect. And so let's say you have this posture, it'll get short through here and tight, it'll lengthen through here and tight, and it'll actually eventually go symmetrical. If you imagine this from a front view, any additional strain over here, the body will compensate for and eventually create another compensation for on the other side. Now, if you're super nerdy and you like to look up that stuff, Pflueger's laws of physiology, the law of symmetry, will go over that in more detail. Interesting little tidbit. We got Pflueger's laws and most of our understanding for how muscles work with pain from electrocution. They would charge people up with voltage and see what would happen within the body and what effects would occur because of it. If you ever want to have a little nerdy time, go look up that stuff online. So, you have this basic structure, but it's hard to visualize that image within your own body. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take this simple concept and we're going to break it down into some lines of parallel. Now, if you imagine, like, what is good about a parallel line? As two parallel lines go forward, if they went on for eternity, they would never intersect. Now, there are certain positions or points in the body where if you use your muscles to try to make them parallel, even if you can't succeed, it will keep certain joints open and from having excessive fatigue or strain through them. The way that I was taught it originally, and I did some studying both in yoga and some traditional martial arts and both in massage therapy college, okay, was that there are 6 lines of parallel where if you aim to keep them connected and parallel together, you'll keep a connecting line of posture and strength. So, from a front view, we have 3. We have your feet flat on the ground, okay? Now for those with arch support issues or weak arches, take this with a grain of salt, okay? This is for a average person without a whole lot of injury or insult throughout their life, okay? We have the line right here. It's the pelvic floor. Okay. And then right here is your chin line. All right. So, if you're wearing high heels, for some reason, either while you're getting a massage or exercising or performing a massage, this space right here, your feet not being flat on the ground, takes you out of parallel. And you can imagine what wearing excessive like heels does to your knees, your hips, your ankles, all those things. That's one of the reasons why, because you're throwing off that model. The next one is this pelvic floor right here. Now, in a lot of modern anatomy and kinesiology, there's a big issue with the pelvic floor because we have a natural anterior tilt where the pubic bone is down and the tailbone is a little bit up, and you see it like this, okay? We see a lot of excessive anterior tilt. Now, one of the problems with this is that according to research, that natural anterior tilt of the pelvic floor makes it so our spine is imperfect. So it is built to break down. And there are 2 basic groups thought when it comes to modern kinesiology, at least from my experience going through the collegiate level kinesiology courses. And that is, it's naturally occurring, it's supposed to be there, don't try to change it at all, okay? Even though we're built to break down, don't bother trying to correct it. And then there's the other group, which assumes that that tilt is there partially due to our forward drive. So to work, to eat, to reproduce, that tilt pitches us forward and keeps us moving, keeps us from being sedentary. Now, we live in a different time and age than we did thousands of years ago plus. Okay? We have more tools that we can use to survive. And so one of the philosophies is that we should yoke or bridle that tilt back to a neutral. So we have those two different schools of thought. One where they think that it's natural, and even though it degrades our spine quicker, we should just go with it because it keeps us moving forward, reproducing, working, fighting for our lives. And then there's the other group, which believes that it should be yoked or bridled back to a neutral position, okay? And once again, don't take my word for this. Experiment with it, okay? So one way that you can correct this, and you want to do it without squeezing your glutes. A lot of people have been taught to squeeze the gluteals or your buttocks together to try to correct this. It'll actually cause more issues with more of your posture along the lines here, the parasagittal line. It can create a lot of torque into your low back in a very subtle way. Don't take my word for this, okay? Same thing when we go with the foot here and what the middle of the foot is. Experiment with your body, okay? If you feel like you get more work done, if there's more support for your spine, if there's less fatigue and pain when you make a postural correction, then you do it, okay? If I'm off or you need to tweak a little bit because maybe you've had different injuries or maybe a congenital or a birth defect with how you're formed, then you do that. But you look for the same sensation, and it's actually the sensation that I described over here. It's work being evenly distributed throughout a structure. Okay? So if you're like this and you're pushing into someone for every action for every action there's an equal opposite reaction, you should be able to feel the force push back through you and load into certain areas. You won't be able to feel that as well if you're using way too much tension and tightness within your body. As tension and tightness goes up, sensitivity goes down. So if you're doing a session or if you're working out or whatever, maybe lighten the weight, lighten the pressure, take a deep breath and feel where this is loading, okay? What's coming back into you. Because it's that return that will break you down and kill your life as a therapist. It will shorten your therapy years. Going to the next one, the chin line. Now we see this over-exaggerated in what's known as wry neck or traditional military posture, where someone comes all the way back here, standing at attention, okay? They get rid of the curvature in their cervical spine. We don't want that. If I'm right here and I'm pushing into someone, I'm going to feel it. So I'll slowly bring it back until I can feel that force redirect down into my body, okay? Down to the core and then down and out through the feet. So once again, if you are up or you are down, okay, bring it to a neutral and then look with your eyes instead. If you really need to look at your client or if you're lifting weights, stretching, anything like that, look with your eyes, not with your head, okay? That can be done in a different type of training, but start out just by trying to segregate your sight from your range of motion here. So look with your eyes, not with your head. The next 6 lines, 2 of them are easily corrected. The middle one right here is a booger, okay? Anyone that's had kids or low back pain or anything like that has probably felt the consequences of this middle group being off of parallel, okay? The first line right here are going to be your feet again. But it's going to be this instep or this inner line right here. So right along here. Now once again, if any of these other planes are off and you try to do this, you're going to feel it. You'll feel it in your knees, okay? So what do you do for this? You literally try to align this lower portion of the foot, right before it starts to come out into the big toe area. So right about here, roughly align it into parallel with the other side. If we had another foot over here. Okay? Once again, you'll feel a different distribution of force when you do this. If your feet are like this, and you try to make them parallel, even if you have like a big toe or a bunion over here, if you try to create that inferior mid-step or instep aligned to the other one, you'll feel a difference. All right, so the ASIS, layman's terms, these little hip knobbies right here, little bumps right there, if they, the inner line of them, if you were to take a ruler and put them right here, if they were to be skewed off or hiked up like this, most oftentimes they'll instinctively go out of parallel if there's a difference between the height of them, okay? But if they're off, then what happens is there's a lot of rotational torque that goes up into your low back and shuts off a lot of power going down the rear and the front of your legs, okay? And so these are harder to get back into neutral. Oftentimes, especially if you've had kids with a C-section or if you've had hernia surgeries ever, anything where they've gone in and clipped muscles, you're gonna have a dickens of a time getting those to realign. And so there are a few massage modalities out there that approach that, and we'll be going over that in some of our advanced continuing education courses. But for now, no, that's one issue, okay? If you were to go on YouTube and find an exercise video on doing the pelvic clock or pelvic stabilization at home, it'll give you a better guide for that, okay, on the exercises you can do. That's technically out of our scope. We can do the therapy, but we wouldn't teach the exercises. At least I wouldn't. Okay, so those two need to be in parallel optimally, once again from a neutral standpoint. Now, right here is some of the roughest ones, and a lot of good old-fashioned grandma, like posture correction, where they tell you to keep your shoulders back, you know, chin up, shoulders back. It's an overcorrection. If you just bring your shoulders back like this, and you don't depress them down or almost screw or torque your shoulder blades down into the ribs there, you've missed half the equation. Because what you want are the shoulder blades to be aimed towards parallel. And so once again, this correction, let's say you're right about here, okay? Not only am I off here, but when my shoulders are forward like this, it forces the crown alignment off. And so what I'm going to do is, in a rotational way, I'm going to rotate my shoulders back while externally rotating my entire arm, and then use my armpit muscles and my lats to squeeze it down, okay? Now when I do that, I'm not going to stand like this the entire day. I'm going to use a little bit of a contraction and then hold it there. Now once again, the expectation for this isn't for you to be a dictator with your body and to force that perfect posture, that neutral posture all the time. It's clunky and the body will build the resistance to it. These corrections you can practice while you're doing your massages or while you're doing your stretching or your lifting, what have you. Okay? You want to train it. And if you do small increments of training or practicing these postural skills, eventually it becomes a habit. Eventually you can visualize a perfect triangle, and then your body will actually do it for you. You don't have to micromanage it enough. And the more you try to control it and to be perfect all the time, the more you have to micromanage your body, and then the more fatigue occurs because of that. You cannot force perfection on your body. Imagine your body as a little kid. You have to coach it, you have to care for it, you have to lovingly train it in small increments that it can consume. If you try to do everything all at once, perfectionism, whatever you want to call it, your body's going to get overwhelmed. Let's say I'm doing a massage. I have a staggered stance here, okay? I feel for the alignment between my feet. I do my little John Wayne tuck, shoulders back and down, retract the chin a little bit, push out and aim, and then I sink forward. And with all those engaged, when you push through your fingertips here, and once again I have a straight wrist here, you should feel it go up, down to your core, and then out your feet. and then back into your client, okay? Once again, it's that feeling of even distribution of work that we're looking for. If you imagine these as kind of laws or principles, what are laws and principles for in any science? It's to allow work to be done more effectively. And that's about it. So, to summarize, triangle, parallels, okay? One big concept, 6 smaller ones. If you can't just visualize good posture with a triangle and correcting your crown and feel that equal work, maybe break it down into these steps, okay? Eventually, if you practice and allow your body to rest, because remember, the benefit to this type of practice comes with the recovery. So allow your body to rest and then eventually become a habit. That's about it, and we'll see you next time.